picture yourself standing before the massive oak doors of Warwick Castle on a December evening in 1347, frost glittering on the iron hinges, while your breath forms white clouds in the bitter English air. The wind cuts through your woolen cloak like a blade, and you can hear it howling through the arrow slits high above your head. How, you might wonder, did anyone manage to sleep comfortably, or even survive inside these towering monuments of stone that seem designed more for intimidation than human habitation? Tonight, as you settle in wherever warmth finds you, perhaps wrapped in a heated blanket that would have seemed like magic to our medieval ancestors, or beside a thermostat-controlled radiator that provides more consistent heat than an entire castle's worth of fireplaces, we'll explore the ingenious, sometimes desperate, and always fascinating ways that medieval people transformed their forbidding stone fortresses into livable homes during the harsh winter months. The challenge was immense. Medieval castles were built primarily for defense, not comfort. Their thick stone walls, which could withstand siege engines and boiling oil, also conducted cold like enormous heat sinks, drawing warmth from any room and radiating it uselessly into the winter night. Their soaring ceilings, impressive for intimidating visitors and housing grand ceremonies, created vast spaces that were nearly impossible to heat effectively. Their narrow windows, designed to keep arrows out, also kept sunlight and warmth from entering. Yet millions of people, from the mightiest lords to the humblest servants, not only survived, but often thrived in these architectural contradictions, developing sophisticated systems of warmth, comfort, and even luxury that worked within the constraints of their stone-bound world. The story begins with understanding that medieval castles were not the barren, empty shells we often imagine today. A properly inhabited castle in winter was a bustling community of sometimes hundreds of people, all generating body heat, all contributing to the complex ecosystem of warmth that made life possible within those stone walls. The Great Hall, which served as the social and administrative center of castle life, was the first and most important battleground in the war against winter cold. These enormous rooms, with their soaring timber roofs and cavernous spaces, might seem impossible to heat, but medieval architects and inhabitants developed several ingenious solutions that transformed them into surprisingly comfortable gathering places. The central fire, built in a massive stone hearth that often stretched 8 feet across and stood 4 feet high, served as more than just a source of heat. It was the beating heart of castle life. These weren't simple campfires, but carefully engineered heating systems that burned continuously throughout the winter months, tended by servants who understood the precise art of maintaining optimal combustion. The fuel alone tells a story of medieval resourcefulness and planning. Great lords would begin preparing for winter in late spring, organizing vast expeditions to harvest wood from their forests. Oak, beech, and ash were prized for their long, steady burn, while pine and fir were avoided in living spaces because their resinous smoke could irritate eyes and lungs during the long hours spent gathered around the fire. But wood was just the beginning. Peat, dug from marshlands and dried through the summer months, burned slower and more steadily than wood, providing consistent heat through the longest winter nights. Charcoal, produced by burning wood in carefully controlled conditions, burned hotter and cleaner than raw timber, perfect for the smaller braziers that provided spot heating in private chambers. The truly wealthy supplemented their fires with coal, imported at great expense from regions where it could be mined near the surface. Coal burned hotter and longer than wood, but it also produced noxious fumes that required careful ventilation, leading to some of the earliest innovations in chimney design and indoor air management. Around these great fires, medieval people developed elaborate social rituals that served the dual purpose of entertainment and heat sharing. The evening gathering, where stories were told, music was played, and the day's business was discussed, wasn't just cultural tradition. It was a survival strategy that brought dozens of people together in the warmest part of the castle during the coldest part of the day. Seating arrangements around the fire followed strict hierarchical rules, but these rules were influenced as much by thermal efficiency as by social protocol. The lord and his family occupied the seats closest to the fire, not just because of their high status, but because these positions received the most direct heat. Lesser nobles and important guests were seated in the second ring, where they still received significant radiant warmth. Servants and lower status residents occupied the outer rings. But even these positions were considerably warmer than anywhere else in the castle. The floors around these great hearths were covered with rushes, long grasses that were cut in late summer and dried for winter use. These weren't merely decorative, but served as crucial insulation between human bodies and the stone floors that could otherwise drain body heat through conduction. Fresh rushes were aromatic and provided cushioning, while older rushes beneath them created an insulating layer that trapped warm air near the floor. Tapestries and hangings served a similar dual purpose, providing both decoration and insulation. The enormous tapestries that covered castle walls weren't just displays of wealth and artistic taste. They were sophisticated insulation systems that created dead air spaces between their fabric and the stone walls, preventing heat from conducting directly to the outside. The most elaborate tapestries were hung in layers, creating multiple insulating barriers. The outermost layer, often made of heavy wool or thick linen, bore the decorative scenes of hunts, battles, or religious stories that we associate with medieval art. Behind this, a second layer of plain wool or felt provided additional insulation. Sometimes, a third layer of lighter fabric was hung closest to the wall, creating multiple air pockets that dramatically improved thermal efficiency. These hanging systems were not permanent installations. but were carefully managed seasonal adaptations. In summer, many tapestries were removed and stored to allow air circulation that would cool the stone walls. In winter, they were reinstalled in carefully planned arrangements that maximized their insulating effect while maintaining the aesthetic and social functions that made them appropriate for noble residences. The beds where medieval people actually slept were marvels of thermal engineering disguised as furniture. The massive four-poster beds that we associate with medieval castles were not just status symbols, but sophisticated heat retention systems designed to create warm microclimates within the larger cold environment of castle bedchambers. The heavy curtains that surrounded these beds served multiple functions. During the day, they could be pulled back to allow the bed to air out and to integrate the sleeping area with the rest of the chamber. At night, they were drawn close to create an enclosed space that trapped body heat and breath, forming a warm microclimate that could be 10 or 15 degrees warmer than the surrounding room. The curtains themselves were often made of multiple layers of fabric. The outermost layer, visible during the day, was typically made of fine wool, silk, or linen, decorated with embroidery or other ornamentation appropriate to the owner's status. Inner layers were chosen specifically for their thermal properties: wool for insulation, linen for comfort against the skin, sometimes even fur for the coldest nights. Inside these enclosed sleeping spaces, medieval people employed layers upon layers of warming materials. The mattress itself was typically a large cloth sack filled with straw, wool, or feathers materials, chosen not just for comfort, but for their insulating properties. Straw was the most common filling because it was readily available and provided good insulation, though it needed to be changed regularly as it compressed and lost its thermal efficiency. Wealthy nobles often used feather mattresses, which provided superior insulation because of the air trapped between individual feathers. Down, the soft underfeathers of ducks and geese, was the most prized filling because it provided maximum warmth with minimum weight, though it was so expensive that only the wealthiest could afford it. But the mattress was just the foundation of a complex layered system. Multiple wool blankets, often woven specifically for thermal efficiency rather than appearance, provided the primary insulation. These were covered by finer blankets or quilts that served both functional and aesthetic purposes. Fur coverlets, bearskin, wolfskin, or sheepskin, with the wool intact, provided additional warmth and were often family heirlooms passed down through generations. The truly ingenious part of medieval sleeping arrangements was the use of heated stones, metal objects, and even living creatures to provide localized warmth throughout the night. Warming stones, smooth river rocks, or specially shaped pieces of soapstone were heated in the great hall's fire during the evening, and then wrapped in cloth and placed at the foot of the bed just before sleep. These thermal masses could provide warmth for hours. gradually releasing their stored heat to keep feet and legs comfortable through the coldest part of the night. Metal warming pans, filled with hot coals from the fire, were used to pre-warm the bed before the occupant retired. These long-handled copper or brass pans were moved systematically between the sheets to warm the entire sleeping surface, then removed before sleep to prevent accidents. Some wealthy households had multiple warming pans that could be rotated, one heating by the fire while another was warming the bed. The practice of sharing beds, which modern people often view as a consequence of limited space, was actually a sophisticated heating strategy. Human bodies generate significant heat, and sharing sleeping space with family members, trusted servants, or even dogs and cats was an effective way to maintain warmth throughout the night. Noble children often slept with carefully chosen servants who were selected partly for their reliability as bedwarmers. Dogs, particularly large hunting breeds, were prized as bedtime companions, not just for their loyalty, but for their warmth. A large mastiff or deerhound could provide as much heat as another human being, and their body temperature naturally ran several degrees higher than humans, making them excellent living heating systems. Cats, with their ability to seek out and curl up in the warmest available spots, were valued for their heat-finding expertise as much as their pest control abilities. The clothing that medieval people wore to bed was as carefully considered as their daytime garments, but designed specifically for thermal efficiency rather than appearance. Nightgowns were typically made of multiple layers of linen, wool, or both, designed to trap warm air close to the body while allowing moisture from perspiration to escape. Nightcaps, which might seem quaint to modern eyes, served a crucial function in heat retention. The human head loses heat rapidly, and covering it during sleep was essential for maintaining overall body warmth. These caps were often made of wool or fur and were sized to cover not just the top of the head, but the ears and back of the neck as well. Bed socks, made of thick wool and sometimes lined with fur, protected feet from the cold that could seep up from stone floors, even through layers of rushes and rugs. Many medieval people slept in multiple layers of clothing, adding or removing garments as the night progressed and temperatures changed. The private chambers where noble families slept were heated by smaller fireplaces that were engineering marvels in their own right. These intimate fires were designed to heat smaller spaces more efficiently than the great hearths of the main hall. The fireplaces in bedchambers were often equipped with andirons' decorative metal stands that held logs at the optimal angle for efficient burning, while allowing air to circulate underneath for better combustion. Some of the most sophisticated castle heating systems included hypocausts, underground heating systems inherited from Roman engineering. These systems circulated hot air from a central furnace through channels built into the walls and floors, providing radiant heat that was more comfortable and efficient than direct fire heat, though complex and expensive to build. Hypocausts could heat entire sections of a castle with a single large fire, and the thermal mass of the stone floors and walls would continue radiating warmth hours after the fire had died down. The daily routine of castle life was organized around thermal efficiency as much as social custom. People rose late and retired early during the winter months, taking advantage of the warmth accumulated during the day and avoiding the coldest hours of the night. The main meal was served at midday, when natural sunlight could supplement the heat from cooking fires, and evening activities were concentrated in the warmest parts of the castle. Communal activities like spinning, weaving, and craft work were scheduled during the coldest parts of the day, bringing people together in shared spaces where their combined body heat made everyone more comfortable. Even activities like bathing, which we might assume were avoided during winter, were carefully planned around thermal management. Hot baths were taken in rooms that had been pre-warmed with braziers, and the bathwater itself provided significant heat for the duration of the bath. The kitchen areas of castles were naturally the warmest spaces during winter, and much of castle life migrated toward these areas during the coldest months. The massive cooking fires that were necessary to feed hundreds of residents produced enormous amounts of heat, and the thermal mass of brick and stone ovens continued radiating warmth long after cooking was finished. Servants and lower status residents often slept in areas adjacent to kitchens, taking advantage of residual heat from cooking operations. Some castle layouts included servants' quarters directly above kitchens, where heat from below would rise to warm sleeping areas. These arrangements served practical purposes, but also reflected the complex social negotiations around warmth, comfort, and hierarchy that shaped medieval castle life. The preparation of food itself was adapted to provide maximum warming benefit to the castle's inhabitants. Hot soups, stews, and mulled beverages were not just nutritious, but provided internal heating that supplemented external warmth sources. Spices like ginger, cinnamon, and pepper were valued not just for their flavor, but for their warming properties. Both the physical sensation of heat and the metabolic warming that certain spices provided. Alcohol, particularly warm beer and mulled wine, played important roles in medieval winter survival strategies. These beverages provided calories for generating body heat, created sensations of warmth that improved comfort and morale, and served social functions that brought people together in warm spaces for extended periods. The monastic communities that often coexisted with or near castle communities developed some of the most sophisticated approaches to winter survival. Monasteries, with their emphasis on communal living and efficient resource use, pioneered many techniques that were later adopted in secular castle communities. Monastic sleeping arrangements typically involved large communal dormitories where dozens of people slept in close proximity, sharing warmth efficiently. These spaces were often heated by central fires or braziers that could warm many people simultaneously, and the thermal mass of many human bodies helped maintain comfortable temperatures throughout the night. The religious schedule of monastic communities, with its emphasis on regular prayer times throughout the night, actually supported thermal efficiency by ensuring that someone was always awake to tend fires and maintain heating systems. The night offices that required monks to rise for prayers also provided opportunities to adjust heating systems and ensure that fires didn't die out during the coldest pre-dawn hours. Children in medieval castles faced particular challenges from cold, but they also received special attention and protection that reveals much about medieval understanding of thermal management. Noble children often slept with wet nurses or servants who were specifically chosen for their ability to provide warmth and comfort. These arrangements were not just about childcare, but about ensuring that young people, who were more vulnerable to cold than adults, received adequate heating throughout the night. Children's clothing was designed in layers that could be adjusted as they moved between different thermal zones within the castle. A child might wear a light linen undergarment in the warm kitchen area, add a wool tunic when moving to moderately heated family chambers, and don a heavy cloak when venturing into the cold courtyards or unheated storage areas. The games and activities that occupied children during long winter months were often designed to generate body heat through physical activity. Dancing, singing, and various forms of indoor games kept children moving and active, supplementing the heating provided by fires and other thermal management systems. The seasonal cycle of castle life was intimately connected to thermal management, with different strategies employed as winter progressed and fuel supplies changed. Early winter, when wood supplies were fresh and ample, might see more liberal use of large fires and generous heating. Midwinter often required more careful fuel management, with smaller fires and greater reliance on thermal efficiency strategies like bed warming and clothing layers. Late winter, when fuel supplies might be running low and the coldest weather often occurred, required the most sophisticated thermal management techniques. This was when stored warming stones were most valuable, when shared sleeping arrangements became most important, and when the thermal efficiency of clothing and bedding made the greatest difference in comfort and survival. The end of winter was marked not just by warming weather, but by the gradual reduction in heating systems that had been maintained for months. Tapestries were cleaned and stored. Rushes were replaced with fresh materials, and the intensive fuel consumption that had sustained castle inhabitants through the cold months gradually decreased as natural warmth returned. Spring cleaning in medieval castles was not just about hygiene and appearance, but about transitioning from winter's thermal management systems to summer's cooling strategies. Windows that had been sealed or heavily draped were opened to encourage air circulation. Floors that had been covered insulating rushes were cleaned down to bare stone to provide cooling thermal mass during hot weather. The knowledge and skills required to manage these complex heating systems were passed down through generations of castle inhabitants, from noble families to servants and craftspeople. Master builders incorporated thermal efficiency into castle design, while housekeepers and stewards managed the day-to-day operations that kept everyone warm and comfortable. These skills were not just practical necessities, but represented sophisticated understanding of physics, material science, and human physiology. Medieval people understood heat conduction, radiation, and convection, even if they didn't use those scientific terms. They knew which materials provided the best insulation, how to design air circulation systems, and how to balance fire safety with heating efficiency. The social dynamics of warmth distribution in medieval castles reflected broader patterns of hierarchy and power, but they also revealed the practical necessities that sometimes transcended social boundaries. A lord who allowed his servants to freeze would find himself without the labor necessary to maintain his heating systems. A noble lady who didn't ensure adequate warmth for her household's children would face practical and moral consequences that could affect her family's reputation and survival. These dynamics created a complex web of mutual dependence around thermal management that influenced everything from architectural design to daily social interactions. The warmest places in the castle became centers of power and influence, while the ability to provide warmth for others became a form of social capital that could be used to build alliances and obligations. The romantic image of medieval castle life often overlooks these practical realities, but understanding how people stayed warm reveals much about medieval ingenuity, social organization, and daily experience. The stone walls that seem so forbidding to modern eyes were transformed by their inhabitants into comfortable homes through techniques that required extensive knowledge, careful planning, and community cooperation. Modern visitors to medieval castles often comment on how cold and uncomfortable they seem. But this impression comes from experiencing these spaces without the heating systems, furnishings, and human activity that made them livable. A castle in winter, properly heated and fully inhabited, would have been warm, comfortable, and filled with the sounds, smells, and activities of a thriving community. The techniques that medieval people developed for staying warm in stone castles influenced architecture, technology, and social customs for centuries afterward. Many of these innovations, from layered clothing systems to efficient fireplace design, continue to influence how we think about heating and comfort in modern buildings. Understanding these historical approaches to thermal management also provides perspective on our contemporary relationship with energy, comfort, and environmental control. Medieval people achieved remarkable levels of comfort and warmth using renewable resources and human ingenuity, creating sustainable heating systems that operated for centuries without depleting their resource base or causing significant environmental damage. The next time you adjust your thermostat or pull a heated blanket around your shoulders, you're participating in a tradition that stretches back through centuries of human innovation and adaptation. The medieval lord sleeping warmly in his curtained bed, surrounded by heated stones and wrapped in layers of wool and fur, was solving the same fundamental challenge that we address today: how to create comfortable human environments within the constraints of available technology and resources. The stone walls of medieval castles may have been cold, but the lives lived within them were warmed by human ingenuity, community cooperation, and sophisticated understanding of how to create comfort in challenging circumstances. In learning how our ancestors stayed warm, we gain insight not just into historical daily life, but into the timeless human capacity to adapt, innovate, and thrive in whatever circumstances we face. But the story of medieval warmth extends far beyond the basic survival strategies we've explored. The most ingenious heating innovations often emerged from the intersection of necessity, available materials, and the particular challenges posed by different types of castle construction. Each region of medieval Europe developed its own specialized approaches to thermal management, influenced by local climate, available resources, and cultural traditions that had evolved over centuries of cold weather survival. In the harsh northern reaches of Scotland, where winter temperatures could plummet far below what English or French castles experienced, builders developed sophisticated double-wall construction techniques that created insulating air gaps within the stone walls themselves. These cavities, filled with rubble and sometimes packed with organic materials like dried heather or moss, provided thermal barriers that could reduce heat loss by as much as 30% compared to solid stone construction. Scottish castle builders also pioneered the use of warming chambers, small rooms built directly adjacent to main living spaces that served as thermal buffers between the cold outer walls and the inhabited interior areas. These chambers were often heated by their own small fireplaces or by sharing chimney systems with adjacent rooms, creating graduated temperature zones that made the transition from cold corridors to warm living spaces less jarring and more comfortable. The distinctive Scottish tradition of bed-warming lasses, young servants whose primary responsibility was maintaining optimal sleeping temperatures for their masters, evolved into sophisticated thermal management roles that required extensive knowledge of fire tending, fuel efficiency, and textile care. These positions were often hereditary, with thermal management skills passed down through generations of families who specialized in keeping noble households comfortable through the brutal Highland winters. German castle builders, influenced by their region's abundant forests and sophisticated woodworking traditions, developed some of the most advanced wooden heating systems in medieval Europe. The famous Kasselofen or tile stoves, which appeared in German castles as early as the 13th century, represented revolutionary advances in heating efficiency and fuel conservation. These remarkable devices consisted of elaborate networks of ceramic tiles that absorbed heat from internal combustion chambers and radiated it slowly and evenly over periods of 12 to 18 hours. A single loading of wood in the morning could provide steady, comfortable heat throughout the entire day and well into the night, making them far more efficient than traditional open fireplaces that required constant feeding and attention. The tile stove systems were often integrated into the architectural structure of castle rooms, with heating chambers built into walls and elaborate tile surfaces that served both functional and decorative purposes. The most sophisticated installations included multiple combustion chambers that could be fired separately, allowing precise temperature control in different areas of the same room or adjacent chambers. German innovation extended to the development of hypocaust revival systems that adapted Roman underground heating principles to medieval castle architecture. These systems used networks of stone and ceramic channels built into floors and walls, heated by central furnaces that burned wood, charcoal, or coal in carefully controlled conditions. The heated air and combustion gases were circulated through these channels, warming large areas of the castle from central heat sources. The most advanced German castle heating systems included primitive forms of heat exchangers, where outgoing warm air from living spaces was used to preheat incoming fresh air from the outside, reducing the total fuel consumption needed to maintain comfortable temperatures. These early ventilation systems also helped manage the air quality issues that could develop in tightly sealed heated spaces during long winter months. French castle architecture, influenced by the country's more moderate climate, but sophisticated stoneworking traditions, developed elegant solutions that emphasized architectural beauty alongside thermal efficiency. The famous cheminées, or decorative fireplaces of French castles, were not just artistic statements, but carefully engineered heating systems that maximized radiant heat while minimizing fuel consumption. French builders pioneered the use of reflective surfaces behind fireplaces, polished metal sheets, or specially shaped stonework that directed radiant heat into living spaces rather than allowing it to escape up chimneys. These reflector systems could increase the effective heating power of a fireplace by 20 to 30%, making French castles notably more comfortable than comparable structures that relied solely on direct fire heat. The French also developed sophisticated chimney systems with multiple flues that allowed several fireplaces to share common exhaust structures while maintaining separate combustion chambers. These shared chimney systems created thermal efficiency by using the waste heat from one fireplace to warm the chimney serving adjacent rooms, and they also provided backup heating options if one fireplace failed or required maintenance. French castle heating was closely integrated with cooking systems, creating elaborate networks of shared flues, common fuel storage, and coordinated firing schedules that maximized the heating value obtained from available wood and charcoal supplies. The famous French castle kitchens, with their massive hearths and complex networks of smaller cooking fires, often served as the thermal heart of the entire structure, with careful architectural planning that directed waste heat from food preparation into adjacent living and working spaces. Italian castle builders, working in a somewhat milder climate, but often dealing with structures built on mountainous terrain that created unique thermal challenges, developed heating systems that emphasized portability and flexibility. The Italian tradition of scaldini, portable heating devices that could be moved between rooms as needed, influenced castle heating design throughout the Mediterranean region. Italian scaldini ranged from simple braziers that burned charcoal or wood scraps to elaborate wheeled heating devices that included built-in fuel storage, adjustable heat output controls, and decorative metalwork that made them suitable for use in formal reception areas. The most sophisticated scaldini included primitive thermostatic controls that regulated fuel consumption based on ambient temperature, maintaining steady heat output without requiring constant attention. The Italian approach to castle heating also emphasized the use of thermal mass in creative ways that took advantage of the region's abundant stone resources and skilled masonry traditions. Italian builders developed techniques for incorporating heated stone elements into furniture, flooring, and even clothing storage systems that provided long-lasting warmth from relatively small initial heat inputs. Italian castle bedrooms often featured stone beds, sleeping platforms built from carefully selected stone materials that absorbed heat during the day from sunlight streaming through south-facing windows, then radiated that stored warmth throughout the night. These thermal mass sleeping systems were supplemented with the textile and fuel-based heating methods used throughout Europe, but they provided a foundation of steady, fuel-free warmth that reduced overall heating costs and improved comfort. The Byzantine influence on Italian castle design also introduced sophisticated approaches to managing humidity and air quality in heated spaces. Byzantine builders had developed ventilation systems that prevented the stuffiness and air quality problems that could develop in tightly sealed winter quarters. Using carefully designed air circulation systems that maintained thermal efficiency while providing fresh air circulation. English castle builders, working in a maritime climate with abundant rainfall and moderate but persistent cold, developed heating systems that emphasized moisture management alongside thermal efficiency. The famous English tradition of warming pans evolved into elaborate systems of heated metal objects that served dual functions as bed warmers and humidity control devices. English warming pans were often filled with aromatic materials, herbs, spices, or scented woods that provided pleasant fragrances while heating bedrooms. and eliminating the musty odors that could develop in tightly closed heated spaces. The most sophisticated English warming systems included networks of metal pipes that circulated heated air or even heated water through wall and floor systems, providing radiant heat that was both efficient and comfortable. The English also developed advanced approaches to managing fuel supplies that reflected their island geography and limited forest resources. English castles often included elaborate fuel storage and preparation areas where wood was carefully dried and seasoned to maximize its heating value, where coal was processed to remove impurities that could create harmful fumes, and where alternative fuels like peat and dried agricultural waste were prepared for use during periods when premium fuels were scarce or expensive. English castle heating systems were often designed with careful attention to fire safety, reflecting hard-learned lessons from castle fires that had destroyed entire structures and killed their inhabitants. English builders pioneered the use of fire-resistant materials in heating system construction, elaborate fire suppression systems that could quickly extinguish heating fires that got out of control, and architectural designs that contained fires to specific areas rather than allowing them to spread throughout wooden castle structures. The monastic communities scattered throughout medieval Europe developed some of the most innovative and efficient heating systems, driven by their communal living arrangements, limited resources, and sophisticated understanding of engineering principles. Monastic heating innovations often spread to secular castle communities through the movement of skilled craftsmen and the influence of abbots and abbesses who served as advisors to noble families. Cistercian monasteries, with their emphasis on technological innovation and efficient resource use, pioneered many of the water-powered systems that revolutionized medieval heating. Cistercian engineers developed water-powered bellows that could maintain consistent airflow to large fires, increasing combustion efficiency and heat output while reducing the labor required to tend heating systems. The Cistercians also developed sophisticated water heating systems that used the waste heat from their forge operations, bread ovens, and other industrial activities to heat water for bathing, laundry, and building heating. These early district heating systems circulated heated water through networks of pipes and channels that could warm entire monastery complexes from centralized heat sources. Benedictine monasteries, with their emphasis on scholarship and learning, became centers for developing and preserving heating technology knowledge. Benedictine libraries contained treatises on heating system design, fuel efficiency, and thermal management that preserved Roman engineering knowledge and documented medieval innovations that might otherwise have been lost. The rule of Saint Benedict, with its emphasis on caring for the sick and elderly, encouraged monastic communities to develop specialized heating systems for their infirmaries and elder care facilities. These systems often featured more precise temperature control, better air quality management, and more comfortable heating arrangements than were available in secular castle communities. Monastic communities also developed some of the earliest systematic approaches to studying and optimizing heating efficiency. Monastic records from the 12th and 13th centuries include detailed observations of fuel consumption, heating effectiveness, and thermal comfort that represent some of the earliest scientific approaches to understanding building heating systems. The seasonal rhythms of medieval castle life were intimately connected to the availability and management of heating fuels, creating elaborate annual cycles of preparation, conservation, and consumption that shaped every aspect of castle community life. Spring activities included the cutting and collection of wood for the following winter, with entire households participating in expeditions to harvest timber from castle-controlled forests. These wood-gathering expeditions were carefully planned operations that required extensive knowledge of forest management, wood seasoning, and fuel quality assessment. Different types of wood were harvested for different purposes. Oak for long-burning overnight fires, pine for quick-starting kindling, fruit woods for heating living spaces where their pleasant aroma would be appreciated. Summer activities included the preparation and processing of fuel supplies, with wood being split, stacked, and dried in carefully constructed storage areas that protected it from rain, while allowing air circulation that prevented rot and mold. Castle fuel storage areas were sophisticated structures that could preserve heating materials for months or even years, ensuring that adequate supplies would be available during periods of shortage or emergency. Autumn was the season for final fuel preparation and the implementation of winter heating systems. Tapestries were cleaned and reinstalled. Heating equipment was inspected and repaired, and fuel supplies were moved from outdoor storage areas to indoor locations where they would remain accessible during severe winter weather. The transition from autumn to winter marked the beginning of the heating season, with the lighting of the great hall fires in formal ceremonies that marked the beginning of the cold weather period. These ceremonies were both practical necessities and important social rituals that reinforced community bonds and established the social arrangements that would govern castle life during the months when everyone would be confined indoors. Winter fuel management required careful planning and conservation strategies that balanced thermal comfort with fuel availability. Castle stewards maintained detailed records of fuel consumption, monitoring usage rates and adjusting heating schedules to ensure that supplies would last through the entire winter season. The most sophisticated castle heating management included contingency planning for extended cold periods, fuel supply disruptions, and emergency situations that might require rationing or alternative heating strategies. These contingency plans often included agreements with neighboring communities for emergency fuel sharing. Knowledge of alternative fuel sources like peat bogs or coal deposits, and techniques for extending fuel supplies through more efficient burning methods. The social dynamics of fuel management created complex relationships within castle communities, as access to heating fuel became a form of currency and social control. Castle lords used heating privileges as rewards for loyal service and punishments for misconduct, creating hierarchical heating systems that reflected and reinforced social status distinctions. But these hierarchical systems were balanced by practical necessities that required cooperation and mutual assistance in managing heating systems. A castle where the servants responsible for maintaining fires were inadequately heated would quickly become a castle where the heating systems failed entirely, creating practical limits on how unequally heating resources could be distributed. The technological innovations that emerged from medieval castle heating needs influenced the development of heating systems for centuries afterward. Many of the principles developed by medieval castle builders, thermal mass heating, radiant heat systems, zone heating, and integrated fuel management, continue to influence modern building heating design. The medieval understanding of thermal comfort, which emphasized layered heating systems that provided different types of warmth for different activities and times of day, offered lessons about heating efficiency that remain relevant in contemporary discussions about energy conservation and sustainable building design. Medieval heating systems were inherently sustainable, using renewable fuel sources and heating technologies that operated within the carrying capacity of their local ecosystems. The sophisticated fuel management systems that medieval castles developed careful forest management, efficient combustion technologies, and waste heat recovery provided models for sustainable heating that operated successfully for centuries without depleting their resource base. The craftsmanship and engineering knowledge that went into medieval heating systems represented accumulated wisdom about materials, construction techniques, and thermal physics that had been developed through generations of practical experience. This knowledge was preserved and transmitted through guild systems, apprenticeship programs, and family traditions that maintained heating technology capabilities across centuries of political and social change. The regional variations in medieval heating technology reflected the diversity of European climates, resources, and cultural traditions. But they also demonstrated the universal human capacity to adapt heating solutions to local conditions and available materials. Whether using Scottish double-wall construction, German tile stoves, French reflector fireplaces, Italian portable heating devices, or English moisture management systems, medieval people consistently developed heating technologies that provided comfort and survival in challenging environments. The legacy of medieval castle heating extends beyond technological innovation to include social and cultural innovations that shaped how communities organized themselves around shared resources and mutual cooperation. The heating systems that kept medieval castles warm required community-wide cooperation in fuel gathering, system maintenance, and resource sharing that created social bonds and mutual obligations that strengthened castle communities. Understanding how medieval people stayed warm in their stone fortresses reveals not just historical curiosity, but practical wisdom about creating comfort, managing resources, and building communities that can thrive in challenging circumstances. The ingenuity, cooperation, and technical sophistication that went into medieval heating systems offer inspiration for contemporary challenges around energy efficiency, sustainable resource use, and community resilience. The next time you adjust your modern thermostat or feel the warmth from your contemporary heating system, remember that you are part of a tradition that stretches back through centuries of human innovation and adaptation. The medieval lord sleeping comfortably in his heated castle chamber, surrounded by the sophisticated thermal management systems that made comfort possible in a stone fortress, was addressing the same fundamental human need for warmth and shelter that we continue to address today. Using the best technology and wisdom available to create homes that protect and comfort us through the darkest and coldest times. The medical understanding of warmth and health in medieval times added another crucial dimension to castle heating systems, as medieval physicians and healers recognized the vital connection between maintaining proper body temperature and preserving health during the dangerous winter months. The medieval theory of the four humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, emphasized the importance of maintaining bodily warmth to preserve the proper balance of these essential fluids. Medieval medical texts, preserved in monastery libraries and castle archives, contained detailed instructions for using heating systems therapeutically. Physicians prescribed specific types of heat for different ailments. Dry heat from wood fires for conditions associated with excess moisture. Moist heat from heated stones wrapped in damp cloths for conditions requiring gentle warming. And aromatic heat from fires burning medicinal herbs for respiratory ailments that were common during cold weather. The castle's healing chambers, often located near the main heating systems, featured specialized heating arrangements designed to support recovery from illness and injury. These medical heating systems included adjustable fire arrangements that could provide precise temperature control, ventilation systems that could introduce medicinal vapors into heated air, and heated surfaces that could provide therapeutic warmth to specific parts of the body. Medieval understanding of thermal medicine influenced the design of castle bathing facilities, which were often elaborate systems that combined heating, water management, and therapeutic treatments. The famous castle bath houses featured multiple pools maintained at different temperatures, steam chambers heated by elaborate fire systems, and massage areas warmed by radiant heating from adjacent fire chambers. These bathing systems required sophisticated engineering to maintain proper water temperatures, manage steam production, and provide comfortable ambient heating in areas where people would be minimally clothed. The fuel requirements for castle bathing systems were enormous. A single bath session for a noble family could consume as much fuel as heating the Great Hall for an entire day. But the therapeutic and social benefits made them essential components of castle life. Integration of heating and water systems in castle bathhouses represented some of the most advanced engineering of the medieval period. These systems included primitive boilers that used fire to heat large volumes of water, distribution systems that carried hot water to multiple bathing areas, and drainage systems that managed wastewater while preserving heat for secondary uses like warming adjacent chambers or heating greenhouse spaces where medicinal herbs were grown during winter. Castle greenhouses and indoor growing areas represented another sophisticated application of heating technology. As medieval communities sought to maintain fresh food supplies and medicinal plants throughout the winter months, these heated growing spaces used carefully managed fire systems to maintain temperatures warm enough for plant growth, while providing adequate light through south-facing windows and reflective surfaces that maximized available sunlight. The fuel requirements for maintaining castle greenhouse operations were substantial, but the nutritional and medicinal benefits justified the expense. Fresh vegetables and herbs grown in heated castle spaces provided essential vitamins and minerals that helped prevent scurvy, malnutrition, and other health problems that could devastate castle communities during long winter sieges or supply shortages. Castle greenhouse heating systems often incorporated waste heat recovery from other castle operations, bakery ovens, blacksmith forges, and laundry operations to reduce the additional fuel consumption required for plant cultivation. These early district heating applications demonstrated sophisticated understanding of thermal efficiency and resource conservation that maximized the heating value obtained from available fuel supplies. The preservation of food through controlled heating was another crucial application of castle thermal management systems. Castle kitchens included elaborate food preservation areas where controlled heat and smoke from specially managed fires could cure meats, dry vegetables, and preserve dairy products that would provide nutrition throughout the winter months when fresh supplies were unavailable. These food preservation systems required precise temperature and humidity control that was achieved through careful management of fire intensity, air circulation, and moisture levels. The skilled craftsmen who operated these preservation systems possessed sophisticated knowledge of food chemistry, thermal physics, and fuel management that made them essential members of castle communities. Castle brewing and fermentation operations also depended on sophisticated heating systems that could maintain the precise temperatures required for producing beer, wine, and other fermented beverages that were essential components of medieval nutrition and social life. These brewing heating systems required different temperature ranges and control capabilities than space heating systems, leading to specialized heating technologies that could provide gentle, consistent warmth over extended periods. The social rituals surrounding food preparation, preservation, and consumption in heated castle spaces created some of the most important community bonding activities of medieval life. The warm kitchen areas where food was prepared became centers of social interaction, storytelling, and cultural transmission, where castle communities maintained their social cohesion during the long winter months when outdoor activities were limited. Castle workshops and craft production areas required specialized heating systems that could support the various industrial activities that kept castle communities self-sufficient and economically viable. Blacksmith forges needed intense, controllable heat for metalworking, while textile production areas required gentle, consistent warmth that would keep workers comfortable during long hours of spinning, weaving, and sewing. The integration of craft production heating with general castle heating systems created opportunities for thermal efficiency that reduced overall fuel consumption. Waste heat from blacksmith operations could warm adjacent workshops, while the heat generated by large groups of people working together in textile production areas could reduce the additional heating required to keep those spaces comfortable. These workshop heating systems also supported the training and education activities that were essential for maintaining craft knowledge and skills within castle communities. Apprentices learning metalworking, woodworking, textile production, and other essential skills needed warm, well-lit working spaces where they could practice their trades during winter months when outdoor activities were impossible. The castle's defensive systems were also influenced by heating considerations, as maintaining adequate warmth for guards and defenders was essential for military security during winter months. Guard towers and wall walks required heating arrangements that could keep defenders warm and alert during long night watches when castle security was most vulnerable. These defensive heating systems had to balance thermal comfort with military security, providing warmth without creating light or smoke signatures that could reveal guard positions to potential attackers. The solutions often involved portable heating devices that could be moved as needed, covered fire arrangements that concealed flames and controlled smoke, and heated clothing systems that provided personal warmth without requiring fixed heating installations. Castle armories and weapon storage areas required controlled heating to prevent moisture damage that could ruin expensive weapons and armor. These spaces needed heating systems that could maintain stable temperatures and humidity levels without creating fire hazards that could destroy the military equipment that was essential for castle defense. The maintenance of castle heating systems during winter months required specialized knowledge and skills that were essential for community survival. The craftsmen responsible for chimney cleaning, fire safety, fuel preparation, and heating system repair possessed technical expertise that made them indispensable members of castle communities. These heating system maintenance activities were carefully scheduled throughout the winter to ensure that essential systems remained operational during the coldest periods. Chimney cleaning was performed during brief warm spells to prevent dangerous creosote buildup. Heating equipment was inspected and repaired before the coldest weather arrived, and fuel supplies were monitored and managed to prevent shortages during critical periods. The training of heating system specialists was an essential component of castle education, as communities needed multiple people with the knowledge and skills necessary to maintain thermal comfort and safety. These training programs included theoretical knowledge about fire behavior, thermal physics, and fuel chemistry, as well as practical skills in system construction, maintenance, and troubleshooting. Castle fire safety systems were sophisticated combinations of prevention, early detection, and suppression capabilities that protected both the heating systems that communities depended on and the people and property that could be destroyed by uncontrolled fires. Fire safety education was an essential component of castle life, as every resident needed to understand fire hazards and emergency response procedures. The architectural integration of heating systems with fire safety measures influenced castle design for centuries, creating building layouts that maximized thermal efficiency while minimizing fire risks. These design principles included fire-resistant construction materials, compartmentalization that could contain fires to limited areas, and evacuation routes that remained accessible even during heating system emergencies. Medieval understanding of the psychological and social effects of warmth influenced castle heating design in ways that went far beyond simple thermal comfort. Warm, well-heated spaces supported the social interactions, cultural activities, and community bonding that were essential for maintaining morale and social cohesion during difficult winter months when castle communities were isolated and confined. The design of heated social spaces, great halls, family chambers, workshops, and religious areas reflected sophisticated understanding of how physical comfort influenced human behavior, social relationships, and community effectiveness. Comfortable, warm environments supported productive work, creative activities, and positive social interactions that strengthened castle communities and improved their ability to survive challenging conditions. Castle heating systems also supported the educational activities that were essential for preserving and transmitting knowledge, skills, and cultural traditions. Warm, well-lit spaces where manuscripts could be copied, students could be taught, and intellectual work could be conducted were essential for maintaining the literacy and learning that distinguished castle communities from less sophisticated rural settlements. The seasonal variations in castle heating requirements created annual rhythms that influenced every aspect of community life, from work schedules and social activities to religious observances and cultural celebrations. The lighting of the first winter fires marked the beginning of the heating season, with ceremonies that celebrated community solidarity and preparation for the challenges ahead. The gradual transition from winter heating to spring warming created opportunities for community celebration and renewal as castle residents emerged from months of indoor confinement. Spring cleaning activities that involved dismantling winter heating systems, cleaning and maintaining heating equipment, and preparing for the next heating season were community-wide events that reinforced social bonds and shared responsibilities. The knowledge and skills required for effective castle heating were preserved and transmitted through multiple educational channels: formal apprenticeship programs, family traditions, guild organizations, and monastery libraries that contained technical treatises on heating system design and operation. This knowledge preservation was essential for maintaining heating capabilities across generations and ensuring that communities could continue to survive and thrive in challenging climates. The economic impact of castle heating systems extended far beyond fuel consumption to include the wages paid to heating specialists, the costs of heating equipment maintenance and replacement, the value of heated spaces for various productive activities, and the economic benefits of maintaining healthy, productive communities through effective thermal management. Castle heating economics influenced land use decisions as communities needed to balance agricultural production, forest management, and fuel harvesting to ensure adequate heating supplies while maintaining other essential economic activities. These land use decisions often involved complex negotiations between competing uses for limited resources and required sophisticated understanding of sustainable resource management, the trading relationships that developed around heating fuel supplies. Wood, charcoal, coal, and specialized materials like aromatic herbs for medicinal heating created economic networks that connected castle communities with resource suppliers, fuel processors, and heating equipment manufacturers throughout medieval Europe. International exchange of heating technology, knowledge through trade relationships, diplomatic contacts, scholarly correspondence, and religious networks spread innovations rapidly across medieval Europe and contributed to continuous improvements in heating system efficiency, safety, and comfort. These knowledge exchange networks ensured that heating innovations developed in one region could benefit communities throughout Europe. The legacy of medieval castle heating extends into contemporary discussions about sustainable building design, energy efficiency, community resilience, and appropriate technology for different climate conditions. Many of the principles developed by medieval heating engineers, thermal mass utilization, waste heat recovery, zone heating systems, and integrated resource management, continue to influence modern building design and energy policy. Understanding medieval heating systems provides perspective on contemporary energy challenges by demonstrating how sophisticated thermal comfort was achieved using renewable resources, human ingenuity, and community cooperation. These historical examples offer lessons about creating comfortable, sustainable living environments that operate within the carrying capacity of local ecosystems and available technology. The craftsmanship, engineering knowledge, and social cooperation that made medieval castle heating possible represent human capabilities that remain relevant for addressing contemporary challenges around climate change, energy security, and sustainable community development. The ingenuity and adaptability that allowed medieval people to create warmth and comfort in stone fortresses continue to inspire solutions for creating resilient, sustainable communities in challenging environments. As winter nights lengthen and you seek warmth and comfort in your modern heated home, remember the medieval communities that developed the foundations of thermal comfort through centuries of innovation, cooperation, and careful resource management. Their stone castles may seem cold and forbidding to modern eyes, but they were transformed by human ingenuity into warm, comfortable homes that supported thriving communities through the darkest and coldest times. The techniques they developed, the knowledge they preserved, and the communities they built around shared heating challenges offer timeless lessons about human adaptability, technological innovation, and the social cooperation that makes comfortable, sustainable living possible in any era. In learning how our ancestors stayed warm, we discover not just historical curiosity, but practical wisdom for creating the warm, resilient communities we need to face whatever challenges the future may hold.